content creator, I'm a filmmaker, and we are going to talk about COVID-19, disability awareness, and everything. Just on raw and uncut with real people. Firstly, I would like to thank you for all of you taking the time to be here, and I really appreciate it. Starting your name and what you do in terms of career.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Katouche, and I am a freelance contributor, recent grad, and disability rights advocate.
First topic I would like to discuss is the media representations of a disability. So do you think the disability community gets a good representation by the media industry, and just in general by the public?
Definitely not. There's so much misinformation. I feel like amongst all the different minority groups, you know, people that are treated like second-class citizens, disabled people definitely have zero representation in mainstream media. And it's not accepted as a part of our society. So if life is supposed to imitate art, they don't want to represent life as it is with disabled people in it, you know, because we're perceived as like mistakes, accidents, and something that people would rather not acknowledge. So any representation we have had has been done to reflect that perspective. I made a video a couple of months ago about the representation of Isaac, who is a wheelchair user. I think he's a paralyzed person, in sex education on Netflix. And that is probably it's probably the most up-to-date sort of representation that I've seen anyway. And it still has so many issues with it, and how they wanted to paint him as this very like embittered, dissatisfied with life person who gripes about everything and doesn't form relationships with the people around him. And I just thought, this is the best we've had yet, and it's still so trash. In addition, but then I would say the only representation of people I've seen that is positive, that I've really thought favored and thought was really good, was the Netflix series Special by Ryan O'Donnell, or Ryan O'Connell. It's one of the two, and I always mix it up. Basically, he is a disabled gay man, and he wrote a semi-autobiographical book, about his life. And they turned it into a Netflix series. Jim Parsons, I think, produced it from Big Bang Theory. And it's brilliant because it's the story of somebody with cerebral palsy told from the perspective of somebody with cerebral palsy. And it deals with the nuance and the layers in a very sophisticated way. And obviously the show isn't 110% person, but it's very close to perfect. I'd say it's like 97%. Like, I've never watched a television show and identified more with the protagonist than I did when I watched that. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Is it a series or a film?
It's a series. It's a series. I think, I don't know how many episodes I have, but it's like they have season 1 on Netflix, and I enjoyed it so much. As somebody with cerebral palsy, especially somebody who is not a wheelchair user with cerebral palsy, it was just so refreshing to see that story being told. Obviously, I'm not a white gay man, but I've never felt more identified with them in the depiction of like a white gay man, because they deal with so many issues like pet relationship, familial relationships, finding work, relationships and dating and stuff like that. And it was brilliant. So in general, to answer your question, your initial question, representation is really shabby and needs to be improved upon. But when I see shows like Special on Netflix, it does give me a feeling of optimism. And I hope they greenlight it for another season. And I hope that they welcome other people telling their stories, because obviously it tells one story within the spectrum of disability, but there's so many other disabilities, and there's so many like other ethnic groups and overlaps and genders and stuff that need to be portrayed as well. So
okay, another question. I want to ask, how hard is dating with a disability? I personally think it's very hard, especially in the day of age.
Yeah, I think it has its challenges. I think I'm somebody with quite a, a bustling social life. I have loads of great friends and stuff. So, but I would say meeting people kind of romantically can be a bit difficult. Um, I don't know, like I used to have Tinder and I had Hinge, and using those, it's like I said before, because I'm not a wheelchair user, I have to always divulge that I'm disabled. You know what I mean? I have to tell people because I won't put it in my bio in an obvious way, like, by the way, I'm disabled, because I don't actually think it's relevant to how I date people, but it's not something that I want to withhold either. So as I get to know the person, I'll be like, oh yeah, you want to get to know me. This is part of my life in totality. So da 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 da. And as I'm talking about it, then they're like, oh, some guys kind of close up and they're not really like, maybe they don't know disabled people, so they have a really like narrow view of what that means about the sort of life that you live and the quality of life that you have. And other times it doesn't bother them at all. And so it's a mixed bag, but I would say, does it make it harder? Yes, but I don't have anything to compare it to because I was born like this. So this is what like I deal with. But I do know that in terms of real life, sometimes somebody may not realize immediately that I'm disabled, and then they might be interested, and then when they find out or they realize maybe I move or I walk or something, then they're like, whoa, and I'm like, can you calm down please? They're like, whoa. So it's not like progress. I feel like although being in a chair has its challenges, like everything, that kind of visibility means that the people who gravitate towards you are people who are comfortable and accepting, and they're not bigoted people. They're not. When you're not, you attract everybody, and then you have to have these really uncomfortable interactions with people that wouldn't otherwise have spoken to you if they knew you were disabled. So there's that. But just take it day by day, see what happens.
This virus doubtly will change our lives forever. Now, do you think that this virus will go away after this vaccine implemented, or do you think that this virus will go and come back? Do you think this virus is even real?
I definitely think it's real because I know people who've lost loved ones and stuff. So it's definitely real. It's not like, I feel like there is something to be vigilant about and protect yourself from, shield yourself from, especially disabled people. Because in terms of the medical field, our relationship with medical professionals is really tedious because of things like eugenics and ableism in the hospitals and stuff, and how they appreciate your quality of life and the willingness to dispose of you that exists. And if you compound that with being Black, it just becomes a whole other ball game. Like medical racism and medical discrimination is really, really pervasive. And so amidst a pandemic, you want to do the best you can to avoid contracting anything. You want to be the closest you can be to a picture of health, just for your own survival, because you can't guarantee your safety once you enter that space. Like, you don't feel safe in the hospital. You feel like you're not protected by the people there because of the institution and how it works. So there's that. In terms of the vaccine, I don't really know a lot about that to comment on it with confidence, It's the kind of thing where, so far, thank God, I haven't been in a position where I've contracted coronavirus. So my plan, we'll see how well it works, is to just stay inside indefinitely and see what happens. Like, I live outside London, so it's not as hazardous as if you were in London, where it's a city and people are coming in and out and stuff. No, it's a small suburban cul-de-sac. So the likelihood of it spreading in the same way is not, it's just, the threat is not the same, which I'm really grateful for. But it means that I don't know how quickly my life will return to the pace that it was at before and what that will consist of. And vaccines, yeah, they're, I don't know, it's a very polarizing conversation, I'm not like against vaccines or anything. I think they're good, but also we're like socialized not to trust the establishment justifiably. So it's just a mix of things. But there's definitely a virus. Like, And it's not a flu. It's like pneumonia on steroids. Everyone who's had it and survived has said how terrible it is and tried to warn people to take it seriously. So, but I wish that maybe there was more government policy to make sure that this thing was dealt with in a robust way. There isn't. Their incompetency has placed all the responsibility on civilians to protect themselves from something that can be kind of green lighted by legislation really easily. So there's that, because I don't think it's in the interest of the establishment for people to be healthy and well and safe and protected. But yeah.
Last subject before we finish. I would like to talk about racism. With everything happening recently with George Floyd, with police brutality and racism, it saddened me. This is the world like this we are living. We are in 2020, still experiencing racism. We are supposed to be moving forward, but on the positive side, I am amazed how different culture came together for the protests. Not only did I see black people, I saw white people, Asian community, etc., which is unity. We saw people come as one. Now, which ways can we move forward implementing change to how they policing into the system?
That's a good question. There's so much to be done. I feel like the system was never designed to protect and value and preserve the well-being and lives of Black people. So I feel like it needs to be completely dismantled, in my opinion. So for me, that the first step to that is, you know, bringing everybody up to speed with like race theory, what people have written about race and stuff, because the information is there, brilliant ideas, and I think we should utilize that. So that's something I'm very passionate about, disseminating information, because everybody has a lot of passion, but directing it in a productive way where it's strategic and people are making steps that will reshape the society is really important to me. So I am a big fan of like things like direct action protests. I'm a big fan of like rioting, they call it, and stuff like that, because I feel like it's very important to dismantle what is there in every essence of the word. And the fundamental belief that Black people have no humanity in them, which is why you can murder them like dogs and stuff like that. We have to educate ourselves on how white supremacy works so that we understand how to dismantle it. Because if you don't know how it works, then everything just becomes like a band-aid over the problem, and there's no radical tradition that forces like people to take something out from the roots and plant something better. So for me, education is really important. That's like my main thing. I also feel like we need to organize and consider how other systems inform white supremacy. I think we wrongly look at race in isolation of things like capitalism, ableism, sexism. And there's an importance to that because Black people exist at each of those kind of cross sections of identity, so that we don't just focus on a singular narrative of Blackness and everybody can be liberated when we do something. So for me, that's something that's really important. And I also find that we need to educate ourselves on the African continent and understanding what colonialism and slavery have done to shape the global context of Blackness. For me, that's very important because it all starts there. And if you can understand that, then it's just easier to strategize. Like, because I don't believe that life in the West can be viable where Black people have a good quality of life and are respected and treated as human beings if the foundation from which we come from isn't buttressed properly. You know, I feel like we have to draw in close ranks and really have a deep think and come up with ideas for how we're going to help rebuild the African context outside of the imagination of white supremacy and capitalism. And then from there, if you then travel somewhere, they know that they can't disrespect you. You go somewhere, they can't do what they do because they understand that you have a whole system behind you that protects you from white supremacy, you know? So that's just my few takes on it.
And do you think racism will be finished?
Not without the due work that it takes. And because racism is systemic, you know, and systematic, we have to just dismantle the system by reinvigorating ourselves independent of how we exist in the context and cognition of whiteness, and prioritizing understanding what damage has been done.
Thanks. I think I covered my topics we discussed. Any topics or questions do you want me to say?
I'd love to know, what projects are you working on at the moment?
I would to produce a documentary or film about disability awareness, but it's difficult getting funding, film crew, location, etc.
Okay. Well, now that I know, if I do see anything, I will send it your way. I have a friend, he also is a filmmaker with cerebral palsy. So I will give you his Instagram. I'll like text it to you. And then you can like message him about what he does. And I'll send you some of his work because he's really good. And I think it'll be cool for you guys to collaborate.
You any got projects that are coming up?
Well, I wrote an article about the black disability and liberation and stuff, and it's on the Black Ballad. I'll send you the link. It's actually out today, so super excited. It's like my first like commissioned article. And then, you know, just building my platform, looking for work, the normal stuff, working on bits and bobs.
Do you feel you get discrimination?
I feel like I get, oh yeah, definitely. In life, like everything is just so much harder when you're like a black woman. People just, everything is just, you know, that's why I really appreciate you having me, because it's nice for us to collaborate and do something as a community and stuff. So I'm happy that we finally got to do this. Sorry it took so long, but you know, it's been really cool to be able to do this. So.
We definitely need to do more conversation like this.
I agree. I definitely agree. So.
Okay, and thing else you promote, your socials.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at It's Katouche. That's also my YouTube. So yeah, that's It's and then Katouche, my name. So It's Katouche on Instagram and Twitter and stuff.
I'll put your socials on this screen.
Thank you.